So the nerfs we were all waiting for have finally been announced, and I want to talk about every single one of them, what I think is going to happen to the meta, and if I think they're good or bad. So let's just jump into it. The first one is Deck of Lunacy, going from 2 mana to 4 mana. And I actually like this nerf a decent amount. I would have liked to have seen the effect be a little bit weaker. They transform by 2, but slowing the card down is just as good for a couple of reasons. One, it slows down the potential use of the card itself, right? So you can't play it as early, and since you can't play it as early, you can't somehow cheese out a cheap spell that you probably shouldn't be able to cheese out for 2 extra turns, right? Because let's say you play Deck of Lunacy, and then you get like Nourish, you immediately draw 3 cards to refill your hand, and next thing you know, that following turn they pop off. This way, in order to do that, they would need to wait a couple more turns to do it. And 2, it disrupts the Refreshing Spring Water a little bit. Refreshing Spring Water is also a 4-cost card, so a lot of the times what people would want to do is play Deck of Lunacy, and then play Refreshing Spring Water on turn 3 or 4 as soon as possible because its effect is so powerful, but now they can't play Refreshing Spring Water until turn 5, so essentially it's kind of nerfing Refreshing Spring Water as well, not directly, but a little bit indirectly, which I think is interesting because it was also a problematic card, so making it cost the same amount of mana is good. But yeah, overall, I like the nerf of this card. I don't think it'll be dead, but I didn't want this card to be totally dead anyway, right? Because this is a fun card, and I was going to make a whole video about this, about the difference between fun and competitiveness in like the game of Hearthstone, and killing a card that a lot of people find fun would just be bad. And just a quick note, this card allowed people to make a very budget deck and then make it good by just adding this one legendary card and transforming their spells and stuff. So like, it was a good budget option, it was a good for fun option, and point is, I didn't want to see this card fully die, and now it's like a little bit more balanced in my opinion, and hopefully it's not a problem in the future. Scrolling down, we have the Paladin nerf, which is something that basically everybody asked for. And it's making the weapon go from a 2-mana 1/3 to a 2-mana 1/2 weapon with the same effect. And I think that this is pretty good. You can still play it on tempo, you can still play it on turn 2, and it curves into the 3/4 that allows you to draw a card. If you have a secret, you're able to attack with it twice to make sure you are able to get obviously 2 secrets. That way if the first one's immediately triggered somehow, you can still attack again, so your 3/4 can go off and draw you a card. But at the same time, it pulls out 1 less secret, which is actually a pretty big deal, right? And if you are able to play both Swords of the Fallen, this could limit the amount of secrets you get by 2, but mostly I just want to focus on the first one. And the reason why this is a big deal is because one of the main power points of this card is the fact that you thinned out your deck in order to play it. Or not in order to play it. When you played it, it would help you thin out your deck, and it would keep you from getting a dead draw later on. Which was important, because Paladins, the main weakness of Paladins, in my opinion, has always been, although they have really good stats and tempo, has always been the fact that they have a lack of card draw, at least to a pretty moderate extent. And they would not run out of resources all the time, because they'd have things like Lady Liadrin and like a Hand of a Doll for a little bit of draw or to like refill their hand. But for the most part, they didn't have a lot of draw, and this card solved that issue, because now you're guaranteed to not draw your bad secrets, because you're thinning them out of your deck automatically with the Sword of the Fallen, and now that you're reducing it to 2, that means you're probably going to draw 1 to 2 more bad secrets overall, and it might not seem like a big deal, but on a game-changing turn, when you really need to draw like Lady Liadrin to refill your hand, and you top deck a secret because it wasn't thinned out of your deck and you lose, that's going to suck. But it's going to be great for the people who are playing against Paladin, because they're going to be playing against a slightly less consistent deck. Overall, do I think this kills the class? Absolutely not. Paladin still has a lot of great things going for it, but I do think that the win rate will be knocked down just a smidge because of the fact that it's going to be a little bit harder for them to thin out their deck. Next, we have Jandice at a 6-cost card instead of 5, which I think is very good. This is a nerf that I probably would have, this is the nerf I probably would have done. In fact, for both of these things, or at least for the sword, this is the nerf I would have done. For the Deck of Lunacy, I said either make it 4 or 5 mana, or make its effect go down to 2 instead of 3 cost more. So they did one of those. So far, I've really liked the nerfs that they've done. And so yeah, we have Jandice. I think that this is a very balanced change to Jandice, because with the pool of 5-cost minions being just objectively much better than it was before, this card needed to be changed. Because part of the problem with Jandice, well, not the problem, but the thing that kept it balanced, or the problem with the card itself that made it okay to be a 5-cost card, is that, like, half of the 5-drops kind of sucked. Or were not super efficient. Maybe not half, but like a large enough percentage to where it wouldn't be super broken. But now, there's like one bad 5-drop that's a 1/1. Faceless Manipulator that's a 3/3. There's a new one with Frenzy that's a 3/5. And like, other than that, and I guess Jandice herself, this card would almost always get you bangers. Always get you cards that would swing the tempo of a game. And they'd be both so good that you could play mind games more easily. Right? Like, let's say, in the past, you got that stupid little, like, obelisk, whatever, that was 0/5, and then you got a good minion. The opponent knows for a fact that the obelisk is the thing that dies in one hit, so they'll just ping it off and go about their day. But with this, now if you get, like, a 5/5 and a 4/5, or whatever the stats end up being, you could play a little bit of mind games with them, because you know that they're always going to be good options, and you could sometimes bait your opponent into pinging the 4/5 and being like, oh, I'll just kill it with this real quick, then it doesn't die, and then they have to figure out a way to do 1 extra damage to the other thing, which could be difficult. And the point is, I think that this nerf is really good, because slowing this card down, bringing it all back, means that this power spike of 5-cost minions is delayed a little bit. It is really popular in Rogue, and you can still, like, Shadow Step Jandice, no problem. It's also popular in Mage, but Mage doesn't run this card as much right now because it's no minion. But with the nerfs, I think that this card will be used a decent amount in Mage again as well. But anyway, yeah, this card, going down to random 5-cost minions is, not going to 6 mana, but keeping the same ability is good because it slows down the 5-cost minions, right? It gives the opponent 1 more turn to develop a board to match this card. It gives your opponent 1 extra turn to draw removal for this card. It gives them 1 more turn to not have to take a ton of face damage. Like, just slowing down this card is not going to kill it, because it's still a very, very powerful card, and like I said, the pool is insane, but it does limit it quite a bit. So, overall, I think that all of these nerfs so far have been really good, and let's keep scrolling down. We have the Flinger. Flinger, it was a 1-mana D1 damage spell burst return to your hand. Now it is a 1-mana 1/1, the same stats, but battle cries deal 1 damage to a minion. Spell burst, return this to your hand. I genuinely think that because of this, this card is pretty much dead. Yep, maybe I'm over-exaggerating this, but I genuinely think that this level of nerf kills the card. Because the Flinger is how Libram Paladins, and it is how, like, rogues just in general were able to push 5 to maybe even sometimes 10 extra damage to the opponent's face to finish them off with their after casting a ton of spells, right? And it might not seem like a lot, but losing like 4 to like maybe even 10 damage off of 2 Flingers in your deck not being able to go face anymore, that's going to be huge, especially for like a miracle rogue that was oftentimes able to, like, squeeze out just enough damage for lethal at certain points in the game. It's either going to, A, mean that the rogues just don't have enough damage to kill the opponent anymore, because they actually don't have that much damage without the Flingers. Like, the Flingers do a lot of damage in those matchups. Or they are going to have enough damage, but it's going to take them, like, 1, maybe even 2 extra turns to get there. And their draw engine's limited, because the contact, the rogue card, it's a 3-mana 3/2. The field contact that draws a card every time you play a battlecry minion, or a combo card, is also going to be nerfed, because Flinger is going to be played less. So the draw engine of rogue was also indirectly nerfed, and it was just this card was too flexible. A nerf that I was talking about with some people in my chat were make it target something random, so that way it could still maybe go face, or if you happen to clear the board, or your opponent has nothing on the board, you can still do damage to, say, like a no minion mage, right? So that way you could, like, pressure them a little bit. That would be interesting. But dealing 1 damage to a minion was the thought process that a lot of people had from the beginning, or make it 2 mana so you can't use it as much. Point is, any of those 3 nerfs I would have been happy with. And I think that this definitely limits the power of this card. And they actually say here this card might deal 10 damage to the face over multiple turns, and yeah, and even had the gall to call you names throughout all of it. That was another thing, man. Being called a loser every single time this card was played. Oh my gosh, I don't have to hear it anymore. I don't have to hear it anymore. This is great. But yeah, this card was probably one of the most problematic cards, and this is another reason why I think that Paladin gets hurt a little bit, and why this was the only Paladin card to be directly nerfed, going from 1-3 to 1-2, because this Pen Flinger really hurts Libram Paladin, and also hurts Rogue, which is why Rogue only lost Jandice, which is a card that isn't even played in every iteration of Rogue. It's in most, but not every iteration. So as we scroll down, we go down to the last two cards, which are the Watch Posts. We have the Far Watch Post, going from a 2-mana 2/4 to a 2-mana 2/3, and the Morshan Watch Post going from a 3-mana 3/5 to a 3-mana 3/4. I'm gonna zoom out a little bit so you guys can see both of the cards, I think, and move my face over here so you can still see the stats. There we go. Anyway, I think that these nerfs were pretty much exactly what we wanted, right? We didn't necessarily need the abilities of the cards to change, because they're actually interesting abilities, right? Or in my opinion, they're pretty good abilities. Slowing down the opponent, although annoying, is actually not that bad. Especially in a meta where we're trying to, or Blizzard seems to have been trying to slow the meta down a little bit, to make more mid-range and control decks a little bit more viable. This also hurts combo decks because their combo will cost 1 more and all that stuff. So I think that from that standpoint, this card and this card right here, the Morshan Watch Post, to slow down aggro decks by giving you 2/2s and stuff, I think that that was a good idea. I think that they're still annoying cards, but I don't blame them for trying this out. I think that, again, it was a cool idea. We haven't had, like, buildings in this deck or in this game before. And I thought it was a cool idea when I first read them, but I always knew that the health would be a problem. Summoning a 2-mana 2/4 on turn 1 with the coin basically ends the game right there, because there is like no 4 damage removal in the game that could kill the Watch Post. But there's a lot of 3 damage removal, right? There's Lunar Eclipse and Druid. There's Soul Shear and the 3 damage, the Lifesteal. Oh my gosh, I forgot the name. Soul Rend or something like that. No, that's the one that does 5 damage to everything. Point is, there's 2-3 damage spells in Warlock. There's Quick Shot and Hunter if you decide to kill this off rather than go face. And there are a lot of different things you can use that do 3 damage as opposed to 4. 4 was basically unkillable. Turn 2, you'd have to kill it over the course of 2, maybe even 3 turns, depending on what classes you were playing. And this also helps into Rogue, because you can backstab, weapon up, hero power it, and then kill it that way. And the same thing basically goes to the Morshan Watch Post. You can do 3 damage and then ping it with something else, rather than having to hit it with like 2 separate things, and having that still maybe not even be enough. So overall, I very much enjoyed all of these nerfs. I think that every single one of these nerfs was pretty on target. They listened to us with the Watch Post, basically lowering the health on both of the problematic ones by 1. Although I think the Far Watch Post was worse than the Morshan Watch Post. I think they could have gotten away with not nerfing this card. Barely. Because I think the Far Watch Post was more annoying. And the Morshan Watch Post, you could at least somewhat play around, but was very punishing into certain decks. Whereas the Far Watch Post punished everything just for existing. So I'm happy that they nerfed this card, and I do think that the Morshan Watch Post needed to be nerfed, but I think that the Far Watch Post was a higher priority. But they nerfed both, which is great. They nerfed Pen Flinger, which is exactly what we wanted. There were like 3 different ways this could have been nerfed to make me happy and hopefully other people happy, and they did at least one of them. Jandice slowed down a little bit, lowers the tempo. Sword of the Fallen, same tempo, but less cards being drawn from your deck, which means that they are just not able to do the same things that they were able to do. It's just not as consistent. And then the last thing is Deck of Lunacy going to 4 mana is pretty nice as well, just because of the fact that they slow it down, and it could disrupt Refreshing Springwater. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you do, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one, and hopefully the meta will be fun again after all these changes. See ya!